The rain poured down in sheets as Jake tightened the last bolt on the woman's flat tire. His hands were numb from the cold, and his old hoodie was soaked through, but he didn't mind. He'd been through worse. As a single dad working 2 jobs to keep food on the table for his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, he'd learned to push through discomfort. When he'd seen the luxury car stranded on the side of the road, hazard lights blinking weakly in the storm, he hadn't hesitated to pull over. The woman, dressed in a sleek trench coat and heels, had stood under a flimsy umbrella, looking both frustrated and helpless. "I don't know the first thing about changing tires," she admitted, her voice tinged with embarrassment. Jake had just smiled and gotten to work, assuring her it was no trouble. As he knelt in the muddy gravel, the rain pelting his back, he couldn't help but notice the car, a sleek, black sedan that probably cost more than he'd make in a decade. The woman, Eleanor, as she introduced herself, hovered nearby, her designer shoes sinking into the wet ground. She seemed out of place in the storm, like a character from a movie who'd wandered into the wrong scene. "You're a lifesaver," she said, her voice carrying over the sound of the rain. "I've been waiting for over an hour." No one else stopped. Jake shrugged, his focus on the tire. "People get busy," he said simply. "Besides, it's not safe to be out here alone, especially in this weather." Eleanor watched him work, her sharp eyes taking in his worn boots, the frayed edges of his hoodie, and the faint lines of exhaustion etched into his face. "You're good at this," she remarked. "Do you work in mechanics?" Jake chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "No, ma'am, just a guy who's had to figure things out on his own." The conversation lulled as the storm intensified, the wind whipping through the trees lining the road. Jake worked quickly, his movements practiced and efficient. He'd changed more tires than he could count, thanks to his ancient pickup truck that seemed to have a personal vendetta against him. As he tightened the last bolt, he glanced up at Eleanor. "You're all set. Just take it easy for a bit, make sure everything feels right." She nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you, really, I can't tell you how much this means to me." She reached into her purse, pulling out a sleek wallet. "Let me pay you for your time." Jake shook his head, standing and wiping his hands on his jeans. "No need, just pass it on, help someone else when you can." Eleanor hesitated, then handed him a business card. "If you ever need anything, call me." He glanced at the card, Eleanor Grant, CEO of Grant Innovations, and tucked it into his pocket without much thought. He didn't have time to dwell on it, he was already late to pick up Lily from daycare. The drive to the daycare was a blur, the wipers struggling to keep up with the rain. His mind raced with the usual worries, rent, bills, Lily's upcoming school expenses. The business card felt heavy in his pocket, but he pushed the thought aside. He wasn't the type to ask for help, even when he desperately needed it. When he arrived at the daycare, Lily was waiting by the window, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Daddy," she squealed, running to him. He scooped her up, ignoring the ache in his back from hours of lifting boxes at his warehouse job. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, forcing a smile. "Ready to go home?" She nodded, clutching her backpack. "Miss Jenny said we're having a talent show next week. Can I sing my song?" "Of course," he said, though his heart sank at the thought of another expense. The talent show would mean a costume, maybe even a new dress if he couldn't find something. At the thrift store, that night, after tucking Lily into bed, Jake sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how many times he crunched them. He thought about the business card again, pulling it from his pocket and turning it over in his hands. Eleanor Grant, CEO of Grant Innovations. He'd heard of Grant Innovations, of course. It was one of the biggest tech companies in the city, known for its cutting-edge software and philanthropic efforts. But what could someone like her possibly do for someone like him? Still, the memory of her gratitude lingered. She'd seemed genuine, not just offering a token gesture. Maybe it was worth a shot. The next morning, after dropping Lily off at school, Jake found himself standing outside the towering Grant Innovations building, the business card clutched in his hand. The glass doors reflected the bustling city around him, and for a moment, he felt out of place, like he didn't belong in this world of suits and skyscrapers. Taking a deep breath, he pushed through the doors and approached the reception desk. The receptionist, a polished woman with a headset and a bright smile, looked up at him. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Eleanor Grant," Jake said, his voice steady despite the nerves churning in his stomach. The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" Jake shook his head. No, but she gave me her card and said to call if I needed anything. The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the phone. One moment, please. As Jake waited, he couldn't help but notice the opulence of the lobby, the gleaming marble floors, the modern art on the walls, the faint scent of expensive coffee wafting from a nearby cafe. It was a world away from the cramped apartment he shared with Lily, and for a moment, he felt a pang of doubt. But then the receptionist looked up, her smile returning. Ms. Grant will see you. Take the elevator to the top floor. Jake nodded, his heart pounding as he stepped into the elevator. The ride felt like an eternity, each floor ticking by with agonizing slowness. When the doors finally opened, he was greeted by a sleek, minimalist office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Eleanor Grant stood by the window, her back to him, but she turned as he entered. Jake, she said, her voice warm. I've been hoping you'd call. He swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. I didn't know if you'd remember me. She smiled, crossing the room to shake his hand. Of course I remember you. You helped me when I needed it most. Now, tell me, what can I do for you? Jake hesitated, then took a deep breath. I'm struggling, he admitted. I'm a single dad, and I'm doing everything I can to provide for my daughter, but it's not enough. I don't know what to do. Eleanor's expression softened, and she gestured for him to sit. Let's see how I can help. As Jake began to explain his situation, he felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. Maybe, just maybe, this chance encounter would change everything. The first few weeks at Grant Innovations were a whirlwind. Jake had never worked in an office before, let alone one as high-tech and fast-paced as this. The learning curve was steep, but Eleanor had assigned him a mentor, a kind woman named Maria who patiently walked him through everything from email etiquette to the company's proprietary software. At first, Jake felt out of place. His coworkers wore tailored suits and carried themselves with a confidence he couldn't quite match. He stuck out in his thrift store button-downs and scuffed shoes, but no one seemed to mind. In fact, many of his colleagues went out of their way to make him feel welcome. You're Eleanor's guy, one of them said with a grin. That means you're one of us. Jake wasn't sure what that meant, but he was grateful for the camaraderie. For the first time in years, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. The job itself was challenging but rewarding. He worked in the logistics department, coordinating shipments and managing inventory for the company's various projects. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and the paycheck was more than he'd ever dreamed of earning. Still, the adjustment wasn't easy. Balancing his new job with his responsibilities as a single dad was a constant juggling act. Lily's daycare hours didn't always align with his work schedule, and there were days when he felt like he was running on empty. But he refused to let it show. For Lily's sake, he pushed through the exhaustion, determined to make this new life work. One evening, as he was tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at him with her big, curious eyes. Daddy, do you like your new job? Jake smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I do, sweetheart. It's different, but it's good. And it means we can do more fun things together, like going to the park or maybe even taking a trip someday. Lily's eyes lit up. Can we go to the beach? Maybe, he said, laughing. We'll see. As he left her room, he felt a pang of guilt. He'd been so focused on work that he hadn't had much time to spend with her lately. He made a mental note to take a day off soon, just the two of them. The next morning, as he was heading into the office, he ran into Eleanor in the lobby. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Jake, she said, smiling. How's it going? Good, he said, though he couldn't quite meet her eyes. Eleanor studied him for a moment, her expression softening. You know, it's okay to ask for help, she said gently. You don't have to do everything on your own. Jake hesitated, then nodded. I know, it's a lot to adjust to. I understand, she said. But you're not alone, we're here to support you. Her words stayed with him throughout the day, a quiet reminder that he didn't have to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. A few weeks later, Jake received an unexpected invitation. Eleanor was hosting a charity gala to raise funds for underprivileged children, and she wanted him to attend. It's a black tie event, she said, handing him an envelope with the details. I'd love for you to be there. Jake stared at the invitation, his stomach churning. He'd never been to anything like this before. I don't think I have anything to wear, he admitted. Eleanor waved a hand dismissively. Don't worry about that, I'll take care of it. True to her word, she arranged for a tailor to come to his apartment and fit him for a tuxedo. When the day of the gala arrived, Jake stood in front of the mirror, hardly recognizing the man staring back at him. "Daddy, you look like a prince," Lily exclaimed, twirling around in her own dress, a hand-me-down from one of Jake's coworkers. Jake laughed, scooping her up. "And you look like a princess." The gala was held in a grand ballroom, the kind of place Jake had only seen in movies. The room was filled with elegantly dressed guests, the air buzzing with conversation and laughter. Jake felt out of place at first, but Eleanor quickly pulled him into the fold, introducing him to her friends and colleagues. As the evening went on, Jake found himself relaxing. The people he met were kind and genuine, and many of them had stories similar to his, stories of struggle and perseverance, of second chances and new beginnings. Toward the end of the night, Eleanor took the stage to give a speech. She spoke passionately about the importance of giving back, of lifting others up when they needed it most. Then, to Jake's surprise, she called him up to the stage. "This is Jake," she said, her voice warm. "He's one of the most selfless people I've ever met. A few months ago, he stopped to help me on the side of the road, not knowing who I was or what I could do for him. That act of kindness changed my life, and it's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small the gesture may seem." The room erupted in applause, and Jake felt his cheeks flush. He hadn't expected this, hadn't expected any of it. As he stepped off the stage, Eleanor pulled him aside. "You've done so much for me," she said. "I want to do more for you. I've set up a trust fund for Lily's education, and I'd like to help you buy a house, a real home for the two of you." Jake's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she said, smiling. "Just keep being the amazing person you are." In the months that followed, Jake's life continued to transform. He and Lily moved into a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, with a backyard where she could play in a room of her own to fill with toys and laughter. Jake's job at Grant Innovations became more than just a paycheck, it became a career, a path to a future he'd never dared to dream of. But the greatest change was in Jake himself. He no longer felt like he was just surviving, just scraping by. He felt like he was living, like he was building a life worth living. And it all started with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night. As he tucked Lily into bed one evening, she looked up at him and said, "Daddy, do you think we'll ever see Ms. Eleanor again?" Jake smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think so, sweetheart. She's part of our story now." And as he sat there, watching his daughter drift off to sleep, Jake realized that sometimes, the smallest moments could lead to the biggest changes. Sometimes, all it took was a little kindness to change a life, or two.